Sorry, I had to wait for my light, you understand. Thank you guys so much for being here. My name's Jenelle Riley. I'm an editor at Variety. I'm so thrilled to welcome you to this Q&A with this wonderful movie, All About Nina. At this time, please join me in welcoming the remarkable women who brought this movie to life. I want to start with the writer-director of the film. She is the co-writer of Raising Victor Vargas, which earned her both Independent Spirit Award nominations and a nomination for the Humanitas Prize. Believe it or not, this is her feature film debut. Please welcome Eva Vives. Also joining us is one of the best actors working today with roles in films like Smashed and 13 Cloverfield Lane, and of course the third season of Fargo. With her performance as Nina, she once again delivers a stunning performance as a very complicated character. Please welcome Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Do you feel comfortable with a mic in your hand? Does this feel natural now?
More and more, yes, yes.
She's going to give us a tight five tonight.
Please, God, no.
Thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on really a special movie, which I'm going to get into and praise ad nauseum in a moment. But because this is a SAG audience, I always like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card? Yeah.
I was very lucky. I kind of stumbled into it really young. I had my first job when I was 12. And I was living in Salt Lake City, and at the time there were a bunch of TV shows that were filming there.
Really?
Yeah. So I was just like a theater kid, and I really wanted to act. And it was like I got a local agent, and they started sending me on auditions, and I got a job as a guest star on Touched by an Angel. That was my first.
And were you
job.
touched by an angel?
I did not get to be touched by an angel. I did not have that privilege. I was the friend of the girl who was touched by an angel.
Wait,
I could have used that for this as a title. Ironically, maybe. Yeah.
Wait, did that show shoot in Salt Lake City?
It did, yes.
I had no idea.
And the spin-off, which I also guest starred on, called Promised Land.
You're kidding.
Yes.
Not as the same character?
No, it's two different characters.
Wow.
Yeah,
this is like a Law and Order situation.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
So I want to start at the beginning with this film with Eva. Eva, sorry. One of my best friends is named Eva, and so I keep slipping into it, and I know I'm saying it wrong.
Eva Vives, which I think sounds like
That
a
actually
Russian
sounds really
spy
cool.
or something. Yeah.
I was even practicing backstage. What prompted you to want to tell this story and set it in the world of stand-up comedy? Is this a world you're familiar with?
I am familiar with it, but I'm not a stand-up comedian. I just, I moved to New York when I was 18, and I almost immediately got into that world, mostly through bad boyfriends. But I like the world, and it sort of had a little bit of everything that I either was into or was getting into. So I like the performance aspect of it, the writing. I kept going to see the same comedians and saw how they changed their jokes according to how the audience was reacting. And so, in a way, I think it was practice for directing because so much of it is, life audiences. So I just always liked it. And then, I always say, it is very much my story, except for I was never a stand-up comedian, which people are like, oh, wait. That sucks. Right. But that is kind of the truth of it. So I think, in terms of when I was going through a lot of my recovery off of the abuse and all that kind of stuff, comedy was a big, not just that I would go to clubs, but I would listen to a lot of Richard Pryor and, sort of the old school comedians who, Pryor in particular talked so much about his abuse. Yeah. I think he was so ahead of his time that way. And that was really meaningful to me because it's not often that you hear that. So I think when I always knew I wanted to tell my story one way or another, but I didn't want to tell it just as a straight up drama. And comedy had been important to me. And then I thought, oh, yeah, of course you should just be a stand-up comedian. And I knew enough about the world that I felt comfortable writing about it.
Through these bad boyfriends.
Mostly, yeah.
Hard to believe that a stand-up comedian would be a bad boyfriend.
Yeah. You heard it here first.
So did you write this with anyone in particular in mind? And at what point did...
In terms of the bad boyfriends? Or, no.
There's a very
I'm
good
not
boyfriend
naming
in
names.
this, I want to say.
No, I know. No, he's great. But
I mean for the role of Nina.
I mean, it was, I think when I was writing, hard to separate from myself on some level. But then once I I went through the Sundance Labs and really started writing it with it in mind that it wasn't just about me. And definitely, Mary, I mean, she knows this by now that she's an actor that I have admired for a long time. And I knew that it would take a specific act. I mean, it's a in many ways a brutal role, right? Because she really has to do everything. So I think if you're going to do it, you have to just go for it. And really, like our first conversation, I remember you brought up rage, and I was like, oh yeah, she gets it. So we talked about the levels of how much rage and when it was coming out and how much she was keeping down, which I think one of the toughest things about it is what she doesn't say, right? Because she has a lot to say, and that's great. But what else is underneath it is so significant as an actor when you play that. And I think, for me, Mary, when I had seen her before, it was always very layered and I think therefore subtle in a way that I love. So, yeah, she always made sense to me. And I was just lucky enough that she actually knew my husband personally. And so I just went through him. And we met and talked about it, and we were like, great, let's do it.
It was the easy yes for me, obviously, because the role is just so incredible.
But it's also really intimidating. I mean, when you see a role like this, I can't think of anything more terrifying than, playing a victim of this kind of abuse, but then also doing stand-up. Was there any moment where you hesitated?
I mean, I think that was all, when I read it, it was absolutely the most intimidating role I had read. And therefore, I think is why I really wanted to do it. And so it was easy to dive into saying yes, but then the closer we got to shooting it, the more scared I started to become. And then I started to go, oh no, what if I can't do this? I don't know how to do this. What am I supposed to do? And so then I did have moments of not hesitating on wanting to do it, but doubts of myself. But that's normal. I mean, I go through that all the time. But this definitely, I think, brought it to its height.
How do you, I mean, maybe I'm just making you feel insecure now, but how do you work through those doubts?
I guess at least at this point, I kind of, after a while, I have the realization where I go, oh yeah, I do this every time. I always forget at first that I do that every time, and I like freak out and I start to think I don't know who the character is and I don't know what I'm doing and what am I supposed to do, and then I have that moment where I go, okay, calm down. You always figure it out. By the time you're on set, you figure it out when everybody's there and everything's there and you've done the work and everything's in place. It tends to come to life. So usually I go through a period of terror that leads into kind of a release, and usually that's by around the time I start shooting.
Every time, or has there ever been a role where you weren't terrified, and then maybe how did that turn out?
Yeah, I mean, and those are usually the most boring experiences and the least interesting work, and the ones where you kind of go, well, that maybe I didn't need to do that, or that didn't really add anything to my life or to my career necessarily, So you look for the scary ones, absolutely, even though they kind of drive you up a wall at one point or another.
I know I keep harping on this, but it's simply because I can't imagine literally anything more terrifying than doing stand-up. Did you go out and try to do it to prepare for the part or research? You're like, no way.
We talked about it early on. But we never really, I kind of was it was a little scary to me. And also we talked a lot about how Nina is so confident on stage. And so I knew how to do that as a character in front of a camera because I'm an actor and I know how to sort of tap into that kind of confidence. But strip all that away from me and just put me in an open mic night somewhere, I just would have bombed. I just would have been terrible. So I don't know.
All my comedian friends were like, yeah, let her do that.
Really?
Well, yeah, that's what they're like. And, I did consider it for a little bit. But then, I mean, it's when Mary said, we thought, it's not a documentary about being a comedian. And obviously, I do think that how comedians are is very important to how Nina is. But the movie is about a lot more than that as well. And I obviously felt confident that as an actor, Mary would get there.
Yeah.
And we did have a lot of comedians around, what I mean? We did
That's the only thing
hang
we
out
really
with
rehearsed
comedians
a lot too.
Yeah.
All the stand-up we did, run through a lot. And we had Jay give us a lot of Jay Moore, who plays Mike. When we walked in, we went to the bathroom. I heard him coming in that scene. I was like, oh, that's Jay. Yeah, I remember that. But he gave us a lot of useful notes, I think. Yeah. And then Jamie Leftis, who is also a young comedian who is also a survivor and was our comedy consultant.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, was there any other special preparation you felt you needed to do for this character?
I mean, I was certainly, in terms of the preparation, I think most nervous about the stand-up, because the emotional aspects of it were so grounded and so, I mean, you just connect to it like immediately. And the stand-up connected to that, I thought it was so funny, but in terms of believing in myself that I could make it funny in a real way that a comedian would, was what I was most nervous about. So I think having Eva and Jamie around all the time on those days, we'd kind of come into work early on any days that we shot the stand-up, and we would just go over it and come up with new stuff and improvise and rework it and do it so that it felt really comfortable to me. And by the third act or so that we were shooting, it started to be really fun. Like, and they were just they'd be sitting in the audience just going, say this one, remember that one, say that one. And it became really, really fun. And it was also really fun just to do with women, because I've never had a chance to do comedy with women before. So that was really fun, and to be really dirty and gross and just coming out, like pushing each other just to come up with the most disgusting possible things we could think of.
Jamie's really into finger banging, so she was trying to like put in as many of those.
I always come back to finger banging.
Everything comes back. I was actually curious about that because I was looking over your very lengthy and impressive filmography. Have you worked with a female film director before? I know you've worked with female directors in television.
Right. I think you might be my first feature film female director. Yeah. I'm going to feel really bad if that's wrong, but I think that's right. Yeah, because I have worked in TV with female, but no, I mean, never in film, which is unbelievable because I've been doing it a long time. Yeah. So it's. And
I also remember you saying you did feel very comfortable, like when we did those scenes in New York in her apartment where you're doing the monologue, and
it's just totally different. Yeah. It's a different, because it just takes out the second guessing of worrying that something isn't going to be handled the way that you would want it to be. Even if you feel comfortable in the room, you start thinking about, well, how is it being shot, and how's it being perceived, and how's that going to be, all of those things kind of go away, and you can just sort of trust the moment, which is really, really nice.
And Eva, I'm so sorry, my mouth wants to say it like my friend's name, but I got it right. Obviously, we all know the very depressing statistics about female directors. When you hear things like that, does it intimidate or upset you, or does it sort of empower you to just, want to get out there and make your movie?
No, I wouldn't say it empowers me. I wish it did. No, I mean, it's been like this for a long time. No, it does. It pisses me off. but I mean, I'm happy that at least it's being talked about now. I'm not quite sure that it's changing yet. I think so far it seems to be a lot of talk, and not as much action. But I'm hopeful.
Maybe instead of empower, I should say motivate.
No, I mean, I've been motivated for a long time. I think a lot of us, I mean, even in that line in the movie, which is, it's like we're the new species. Like, people have just found out about us. I mean, my overriding, it's like, how have we managed to stay underground for this long? Yeah. I don't know, It's like, we've been here.
No.
A lot of my friends, a lot of the women that I hang out with that are writers or directors, it's like, what the fuck do you think we've been doing all this time?
Yeah. No,
Jenelle.
I just figured we didn't get funny until 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't know. It's slightly ridiculous and sad that we're here, as with so many conversations about so-called minorities. Mm-hmm. It's like, some of the stuff, it pisses me off that we have to say these things. But here we are. And again, I do remain weirdly and eternally hopeful that, we will get there. Yeah. We just have to keep doing the work.
Well, I was thinking, it wasn't too long ago when it was okay to come out and say that, like, women had to be likable in their movies and women weren't funny. And I was like, well, this is one movie that, like, takes both of those ideas and just blows them out of the water. Yeah,
and I mean, my biggest fight in terms of editing was how unlikable Nina is. That was a constant conversation, not for me, but other people, financiers, producers, You know, I mean, if I took out everything that they wanted me to take out, that's why I said, I was like, why did you want to make this movie?
Right.
It's like they didn't want you to throw up. They didn't want you to fuck Mike. They didn't want her, like everything was too abrasive. I was like, but this is who she is.
The movie would be 5 minutes long.
Right.
But you seem to embrace kind of the what I heard Melissa McCarthy use this phrase the other day, bruised characters. You seem to really gravitate towards them. And
Oh yeah, I mean it'd be incredibly.
wrong with you?
Right, I know what's wrong with me. It'd just be so. For me, it would be really boring to play characters who aren't struggling with something, and trying to figure themselves out. I think Nina kind of fits into that category as the movie's going on, she's sort of realizing she needs to try and move forward in a new way. And so she's kind of on these like new sea legs sort of. And that's always really, really interesting to me, regardless of what people's issues are, that they're trying to work through them, We
we have a question from the audience from George. Is it Spielvogel? Did I get that quite? Okay. Wants to know, was this a difficult movie to cast? Want to know how you found the actress who plays Nina, but I think you addressed that. And I'd love to talk about the rest of this amazing cast, especially my future husband, Common, who is what a great actor he's turned out to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's great too. I think he's going to be a lot of people's future husband. But I mean, you should take him first.
I'll be the first ex-wife. I'll take that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. I think so many movies are so hard to get made and to cast that way. Then I think we were blessed in that way that it all went fairly quickly. I'd seen him as an actor, but obviously I knew him, and I don't know. I just thought, wouldn't it be interesting if he was interested in playing someone like this? Like, I've never seen him play this kind of role. And then, I don't know, sometimes it's just an instinct, because when I've met with him to talk about it, I think if you get to know him a little bit, he's much more like Rafe in a way than he is that, there's this image about him as Common, and he is a very sweet and spiritual man. But he's also more kind of like this. So I think he really enjoyed both the challenge of being sort of goofy and vulnerable, and more kind of down to earth. I don't know. So we had a great time with him, and he was very easy to work with, and I love his performance. I think he's great.
Yeah. I love, because the word I always think of when I think of him is smooth. Yeah. And I love how smooth this character is when she's all kind of hard angles and rough. And you guys have such great chemistry. Was there a chemistry read of any kind?
No, I mean, we did once we were both cast. We got together and had a little bit of kind of casual rehearsal where we just got to know each other, and the three of us went over the scenes a couple times and stuff. But
I didn't want them to do too much because they meet in the movie, and to your point, the whole thing is that it's supposed to be awkward and you don't really know if they're gonna hit it off or not. So I thought, and you're right, that your moods are very, I mean, characters, but also your tempos are really different in real life. But I think that worked for it. So yeah, I think he would have liked more rehearsal, but we kept him on his toes.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to keep it fresh, It was good.
That's actually a question. Let's see, we have a question. It's Eric, who wants to know, how different is your preparation for a role in the indie film world versus a big budget film?
That's a good question. It really depends usually on the filmmaker's preference. I'm always usually pretty happy to prepare on my own and come just ready and just see what happens, but I also really enjoy it when a filmmaker wants to really collaborate and talk a lot, and that's kind of what I like. I like just talking about the script and talking about the characters and talking about ourselves and realizing how we all kind of relate to it in our own ways and that kind of thing, as opposed to real rigid rehearsal of the scenes, especially for indie films. I mean, for anything, but especially for that, because there's just something, the camera's rolling and you're working so fast that it's like you're capturing the moments in real time. And so if you can really preserve that, it's almost like you're really just living the scenes. So that's one of the reasons why I prefer not to rehearse with those kinds of films.
What was your shooting schedule?
21 days.
Oh my God.
And I remember complaining to you. I was like, oh, it's so boring. What are we waiting on? And you were like,
she was like, it's so
what
slow.
What are you talking about?
What?
But do you find sort of necessity is the mother of all invention? Once you hit the ground running, it's kind of nice to sort of be down and dirty in a way.
I love it. I absolutely prefer
Worked
it.
for this too.
Yeah,
'Cause she's so, it worked with the rhythm of it. I'm not sure that I would like this schedule for everything.
Yeah, it's
but,
difficult for sure. It's difficult, but in terms of the energy, when you want a sort of frenetic, intense energy, it's so much easier to get that.
And it fell on you too. I mean, she's in every scene. So I remember looking at one schedule once because we were sort of doubling up on some of the comedy clubs as different locations, and I was like, oh, she meets Rafe, she fucks Mike, she kisses the guy in the closet, she does 2 comedy shows, and then like some other thing. Great, like, and and Mary was like
Must be
there
Wednesday.
for all of it. Yeah.
I'm really curious about how the imitations worked. Like, did she just tell you these are the people you're going to do, and you prepared those, or did you ask her, like, is there any imitations you can do?
It was kind of a mix. I mean, there were a bunch of scripted imitations, and so we started out. I tried some of those, and then I made a list of
Remember
people.
Lil Wayne was one
We
of
had
them.
Lil Wayne.
Really?
I'm
Wait,
just
let's
kind of
see
obsessed
that.
with him. No, she was like, no, I'm not doing Lil Wayne.
I was just like, I'm not gonna do.
I
the
just
voice,
wanted you to read
like,
from his diary, which if you guys have not read, it's fucking amazing.
Which we eventually we settled on. I did read from his diary, but in my own voice as Lil Wayne, sort of speaking.
Wait, did he
his
publish
truth.
his diary?
Yeah, his diary from jail. It actually is really great.
Okay.
It's amazing writing. But you came with Kristen Stewart.
Kristen Stewart and
something else.
Bjork.
Mary's a singer, so once I knew that, it was easier to. I was like, oh, let's see how that works into like Cher or Celine Dion, and then it was more about setting it because comedians do this a lot. So I thought for her practice one, wouldn't it be funny if she was psyching herself out, which is also such a normal artistic thing to do, to be like, come on girl, you can do this.
And most of those were kind of things that I just really was just trying out. Like, we talked about them, but they were also things that I just thought, well, I don't know if I could do these people, but here's some people I could try on camera,
Yeah, and you were just riffing because it didn't matter as much as part of showing the process of how she does that. And then for the audition, that's a common thing to set different characters in a place. And I thought, because she was making so much fun of LA, like ordering smoothies seems like. Plus, it gave us a lot of words to play with, which I think my favorite was Herzog because I love him. And it was just so much fun to get into his head and be like a penguin walking into the Arctic tundra or whatever the hell. I can't do it, but it was a lot of fun too.
That's pretty good.
To write.
Have you ever seen the short film where Werner Herzog plays a plastic bag?
Yes.
It's so amazing, right? I know that sounds weird, but it's somehow perfect. Yeah. So that's interesting that you came up with Bjork because it ends up being like kind of a significant plot point in that another comic does it as well.
Yeah, I like that because a lot of comedians end up, they step on each other. Or it happens a lot where you go to like an open mic night and then somebody has the same joke. So I kind of wanted, I mean, my only frustration about the movies, we didn't have enough time to do a little bit more on comedians and their world. But that's a common one. And so we actually asked Andre Vermeulen, if I'm saying her name right, who does the Bjork impression. I said, all right, who can do a Bjork? And she was like, I'll do it. And then she just did it.
It was amazing.
The way. So it was either that or Lil Wayne, which she had a really good impression of.
She
but
did
Mary didn't want to do that. So
I was like, just seemed a little.
She did that for her SNL audition, which was I think it was Lil Wayne high. I don't know. I don't remember. Of course he's high, but
paraglider or something.
Yeah, it was pretty funny, but.
I want to see just all the outtakes from this movie, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm curious, though. We talked about the short shooting schedule. Try saying that 3 times fast. And Nina, like, obviously, I feel like this has to be kind of a dark place to live in this character. I mean, are you the kind of actor who takes your work home with you? Did you sort of tell all friends and family to maybe stay out of your way when you were shooting?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I guess when you're doing a movie like this and it's going so fast, you just don't really even have to, like, see other people. Yeah. You're just sort of just seeing the people you're making the movie with, because you're not doing anything other than sleeping or shooting. So that's another thing I kind of like about it, is that there's really not, you don't have to balance it. It's just, you just dive in for a month and you make the movie and you kind of live as this character. And so I think I don't necessarily, it's not that I'm not able to relax or have fun, but I do kind of like to keep it in me until we're done, So for my memory of it, I don't have any memories of anything
Really?
other than shooting this movie. I don't remember having downtime or doing anything but being Nina during the time of shooting it.
Was she easy to shake at the end of the shoot, or did you find you kind of didn't want to?
Well, I mean, I tend to take on certain things anytime I play a character that I get really into, you know, like I still feel like I dress more in black and wear more red lipstick than I did prior to making the movie and things like that. And a certain like swagger and confidence that I maybe didn't have before, you know, just a little bit of something. So I try to keep the positive aspects of characters that I played, you know, and try to let go of maybe the self-destructive parts, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, there are so many things I do like about Nina, you know, and even the things that, I mean, I kind of just, and I love how accepting people of her landlord, you know, I think we all know that person, you know, and she's very understanding that, like, I don't want to take part in your hippie rituals. Right. Yeah. Although I was kind of hoping by the end, you know, she'd come around and we see her in a drum circle or something.
I know, I feel like that's happened.
Maybe a few years down the line,
Yeah. And I mean, for you, was this a difficult shoot, or did you find it cathartic in some ways to tell your story?
You know, I wish I had a better I mean, I had a lot of fun on the shoot, so that was fun. I think by the time we shot it, I'd sort of come to my own understanding of where I am in this path. I think shooting the monologue was definitely cathartic and unexpected for me in the sense that, you know, it's just like 21 days. It's another day of like, oh, now we got to do this, right? And then we hadn't really talked about it. I know you've told me since that you were very nervous about it, but you never showed that to me.
Right.
So when we shot it, I remember we said, do you want to just go for it and like do one long take and see where we are? So we had a room full of people, and I do feel bad for them because I think they thought they were there for comedy, and then they got this. But
they didn't know what she was going to say?
No, not in the first take. Wow. No, so that's why they were like kind of laughing when she's doing the first joke about, you know, the guy walking into the Guitar Center and all that. And then, and actually after the first take, I think just everybody was crying, myself included. And that kind of, not that it caught me by surprise, but it was a very meta moment because so much of what she says on stage is taken from my own life. Mm-hmm. And I just had never experienced that. So that for sure was cathartic. Yeah.
How many takes did you do of that, do you think?
Did 4 takes. That sounds very and only the last one, I wish I didn't have to put her through it, but it was like there was some issue with one camera and take 3, so we thought for safety. Mm-hmm. And she just did 4 full takes.
And did you turn it around like for common scene or to show the audience?
Oh yeah, no, the audience we had done, I mean, they were there for her on the first takes, but yeah, I think we had a camera on them. Yeah. And common.
I remember doing it at least once for him coverage.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I mean, how long did it take? Did you just do that? Like, I know you don't have much time on an indie film.
No, and that's the part I don't remember. It was the only time, like, I kept wanting to drink through the shoot and they wouldn't let me. And
you're in a club.
And that was the one time where the producer was like, do you want a shot? It's like,
really?
Yeah. She was like, okay. And she brought us each a shot.
You each did a shot.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so I don't know, I kind of did lose track of time. And I remember the AD, who was wonderful, like being a little bit like nervous. But I was like, I just need a moment. And actually also how rewarding that, I mean, Mary was great. And like I was crying. I think you were crying. We were hugging. And then Common came up and he like hugged us too. And I was like, you know, it was a weird meta moment for sure. It was like, you know.
Tell me more about those Common hugs. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. I won't name names, but a lot of women were like, I wish he hugged me like that. You weren't privy to this, but they're like, why can't I get a hug like that?
Really?
Yeah. Like when he comes over the next day and he's hugging you on the bed.
That's so funny.
Yeah. And some guys too. Everybody loves him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Is it Aislinn? Was that right? Oh, what a cool name. It's a question for Eva. I'm a college student majoring in film and wanted to know if you have any advice for a future female filmmaker.
I mean, no, what specifically? Not any general advice. I feel like we do our jobs really well and you should trust yourself. But do you have anything specific?
How was like the script writing process?
Oh yeah, the screenplay.
Yeah.
I usually think about I think about scripts for a long time before I ever start writing. I used to do an outline for a long time, and I don't really anymore. I guess I outline it in my head, but I don't start writing until I know where I start and where it ends. And that's fairly general. Like, I don't have every scene mapped out because I feel like that's where the magic is. So I need to understand at least what the story is. So I knew Nina was a comedian. I knew I wanted her to start with a monologue that was talking about men and, what they could have done if they weren't trying to fuck us and all that. And I knew where I wanted to go, and that I wanted to feel like we thought that maybe she could be ready for a relationship and be okay in her career. And then you sort of let it take you wherever you want. But I don't know, if you're right, I've also written, I don't know, at least 25 scripts that I wouldn't want anybody to read, but that I finished, and I think that's really important. So getting through the whole thing, even if it's shit, it doesn't matter. You learn in doing. That's with most things, right? Yeah.
You mentioned how, a lot of people are more aware that we need better roles for women. We need more.
I mentioned that?
Well, I should say not better roles for women. You talked about, calling attention to the lack of female filmmakers. And I'm curious, since this is actually starting to be discussed, have you seen an improvement in the scripts you're getting?
I mean, yes and no. I've seen an improvement in the diversity. Like that's been great. Especially behind the camera. I've had a lot more meetings with female directors, and that's been amazing. So that's huge. But and maybe it's just too soon to see like tons more roles coming my way that are, like this, these are still hard to find. But hopefully there'll be more and more, if we can kind of just convince people that they can be successful and that people want to come and see them, But I do feel absolutely a change in the general culture and the business side of it too, sort of the people that are being hired, and that's really, really exciting, and hopefully we'll keep going that way.
I mean, I was thinking after playing someone so complex and full-fledged as Nina, like, it must be depressing to like get a script where it's like the girl with 2 lines, although you probably don't get those scripts anymore.
The complexity is still really hard to come by. I mean, it doesn't, just because the character is a lead character or something doesn't mean that they're given very much complexity or much very many layers to work with. So it's rare. And that's probably always going to be a quest, like a needle in the haystack, To
that end, I want to remind people that this movie is in theaters at the end of the month. Please do spread the word. Do you guys have a hashtag or anything? Or?
Is it all about Nina? Yeah.
I'm sure.
I mean, if you liked it, please post about it. We're a small indie film, and we could use the support. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys
so much.